We have already, if you're just joining us, we have already moved to go into a 95th special session, and we have suspended the rules of procedure for subsections 6.1, 6.2, and 6.4. So right now we're going to review the items under consideration for the consent agenda. So here we go. Approval consent agenda, Department of Parks and Engineering, HP Wage XL 4100 printer stat, York, Pennsylvania for $23,725. Improvements to Heiser parking lot, City Park, Kinsley Construction Incorporated, $261,049.41. Rodney, you have a couple things to add to that real quick.
You got to unmute it, Rob. Here's your mouth. You go up and see where your microphone is. To the left. On your old face. Click on that.
Gotcha. Hello, everybody. I just wanted to give you an update on this. We received a official protest on this bid. When we received the bids, we got 7 bids, very good contractors. When we prepared the bids, we sent out the documents, we send them out, and then if there's questions afterwards, we issued an addendum. In this case, the low bid, Kinsley Construction, did not sign their addendum and send it back in. There are cases that jeopardize them being awarded the contract. In this case, the addendum actually decreased the amount of work that the contractor had to do. In fact, after the bid, they went ahead and submitted the addendum, and they said that they would decrease their bid $3,450 from what they submitted. The second low bidder wrote a letter of protest because of the first bidder not submitting their addendum. I think ultimately the decision to accept the low bid is up to you. Jason Morton and I reviewed this, and you have the discretion to award it to the low bid. And our recommendation is to award it to the low bid. We advertise our contracts. You have that discretion, so it's really up to you. But our recommendation is to award it to the low bidder.
Okay, thank you, Rob. All right, under public, and anything from you guys on that issue with Rodney and Heiser parking? Okay. Under Public Works, we have 2 utility tractors for snow operations, Smith's Implementation Incorporated, $44,243.92. Under the Utilities Department, we have Electric Vegetation Management, All Reliable Services, Inc., St. Augustine, Florida, $75,000. Under Electric, we have Automated Gate System, Long Fence Company, Inesville, Maryland, $37,155. Under Electric, we have Automated Gate System, Pella Plus, Hagerstown, Maryland, $13,478. Under Electric, Decorative Streetlight Assembly, Signify North America, Somerset, New Jersey, for $25,824.24. Under Wastewater, Waste Activity Sludge Pump Replacement, Shorewood, Logan and Associates, Annapolis, Maryland, for $11,608. Under Wastewater, Advanced Observation System, EVG Process, Source Technologies LLC out of Lexington, Kentucky, for $2,000 a month. Under Wastewater MVP Plant Cloud-Based Maintenance Software, CMMS Data Group Incorporated, Chicago, Illinois, $12,185. Underwater, Ductile Iron Pipe, Ferguson Enterprises LLC, Frederick, Maryland, for $33,203. We'll have an approval of an ordinance amending the city code by repealing and reenacting Chapter 140 Land Management Code. We'll have an introduction of an ordinance amending Chapter 35 Ethics Commission of the City Code. We'll have an introduction of an ordinance, Quick Claim of Valley 2-57A, Fitzgerald 550 Highland Way, Geico 650 Sunset Avenue, 648 Sunset Avenue, Brown 614 Sunset Avenue, Thurber 612 Sunset Avenue, Kimmel 610 Sunset Avenue. We'll have an introduction of an ordinance adding a new Article 13 Stormwater Protection Program to Chapter 213 Stormwater Management. We have the introduction of an ordinance amend Chapter 213 Section 5 definitions. The introduction of an ordinance repeal and replace Chapter 216 Article 2 sidewalks and curbs of the Code of the City of Hagerstown. Approval of a resolution use agreement with Hagerstown Area Youth Soccer League. The approval of resolution use agreement with YMCA of Hagerstown. The approval resolution 2020 summer play camps at Robert W. Johnson Community Center, Hagerstown YMCA, and Girls Inc. The approval resolution parking lease for the Byron Center LLC. The approval resolution addendum to purchase agreement for sale of 36 to 40 North Potomac Street. Rodney, you have something you need to add to that or not? Or Jonathan, you're on the screen. Let's hear you. Unmute. There you go.
Yeah, so Mr. Thoburn had contacted us within the last few weeks as a result of the pandemic issues, and especially his lending institution has temporarily suspended mortgage lending. I think it's very reasonable request for him at this time, where he is now asking for a feasibility period to be added to the contract. Had in the memorandum, that's obviously somewhat atypical if things were just standard course of business. But due to the pandemic and again, the issues with his lending institution, we think it's reasonable request for him to make that request to add that feasibility period. He's expressed again that he's still very interested in the properties. If everyone remembers, we have a second property where he still does want to move forward. Regardless, that's the 117 South Locust Street property. But here, I think he would feel more comfortable trying to feel out how things will end up with the economy and lending. And he has requested that we add this feasibility period, and it would be a 90-day period that would expire July 10th. If he would decide before July 10th that he would want to terminate the contract, he could do so without penalty. And then the other part of the addendum would also extend the settlement date. Initially, the deadline was July 31st, 2020. It would extend the date to October 1st, 2020. And again, staff feel Mr. Thoburn's being sincere, and we would recommend approval of this addendum, even though, again, it's a little bit unique with the circumstances.
Okay. So I'm good with that. We are definitely, I think everybody kind of understands what everybody's going through right now. So moving on, the approval and amendment to a license agreement with Central Chemical Respondent Group. The approval of memorandum of understanding with the Maryland Department of Transportation, safe route to school, and the approval of Hagerstown Suns fireworks schedule for 2020, which I'm sure is definitely up in the air. So, all right. Any questions on the consent agenda?
Just have a quick question on item number 5, the electric vegetation. Are there no firms in Maryland? It just seems odd that somebody wants to come up from Florida to cut down bushes.
So this is Nathan Friday with the Light Department. The headquarters for all reliable services resides in Florida. However, they have a satellite office in Pennsylvania. That's where they're actually operating from and providing the invoices and so forth.
Okay, it just seemed like a long way to drive to cut down some bushes.
Understood.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. So now we're going to go ahead and we are going to vote on the consent agenda. Yes. All right. So you have your packet in front of you, of course. When you make the motion, please state your name. And when you second the motion, please state your name. I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much. First is the consent agenda.
It's Emily. Mr. Mayor, I hereby move that all the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Just lost in second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, sounds like 5-0. Next up is the approval of an ordinance to amend the city code by repealing, reenacting chapter 140, the land management code.
All right, it's Emily. Mr. Mayor, hereby move that the mayor and city council approve an ordinance to amend the city code by repealing and reenacting chapter 140 land management code. The reenacted land management code includes the 2019 package of revisions finalized by the mayor and city council. This reenacted version of the land management code shall be known as version 3.0.
All right. Can I get a second?
This is Shelley, second.
Okay. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries 5-0.
I did.
Now, guys,
I'm a no.
question about whether it's 5-0, please speak up, okay? And then we'll take a voice vote, individual. Next up, introduction in chapter 35 of the city code.
All right, this is Emily. I hereby move for mayor and council introduction of an ordinance to amend chapter 35 ethics commission of the city code. This amendment will permit the ethics commission to obtain outside legal counsel in the rare instances when the city attorney cannot provide the commission with legal advice due to a conflict of interest.
This is Austin, second.
Austin, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. You guys are doing an outstanding job, okay? But someone else could read a motion. Introduction of ordinance to reclaim a portion of Valley 2-57A.
It's Lou. I hereby move for the introduction of ordinances making a determination that certain property, a portion of Valley 2-57A, is no longer needed by the city of Hagerstown for a public purpose and authorizing the execution of a quitclaim deed for the following: 1, Fitzgerald 550 Highland Way; 2, Geica 650 Sunset Avenue; 3, Draper 648 Sunset Avenue; 4, Dietrich 618 Sunset Avenue; 5, Brown 614 Sunset Avenue; 6, Thurber 612 Sunset Avenue; and 7, Kimmel 610 Sunset Avenue.
It's Emily, second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Introduction of an ordinance adding a new Article 13, Stormwater Protection Program to Chapter 213, Stormwater Management.
This is
I hereby
Shelley.
move that
Sorry.
mayor, oh, go ahead.
This is Shelley. Mr. Mayor, I hereby move that the mayor and council introduce an ordinance to create Chapter 213, Article 13, Stormwater Protection Program to the Code of the City of Hagerstown. This new article will create a stormwater utility fee for impervious area within the city, which fee will fund the stormwater protection program to meet state and federal requirements.
Okay,
Second.
Austin, second. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, motion carries 5-0. Introduction of an ordinance, amend Chapter 213, Section 5, definitions.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move that the mayor and council introduce an ordinance to amend chapter 213, section 5 definitions of the code of the city of Hagerstown. This code amendment changes the definition of the term impervious area and adds the definitions of the term stormwater management structure.
This is Shelley, second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. Introduction of an ordinance repeal and replace chapter 216, article 2, sidewalks and curbs of the code of the city of Hagerstown.
This is Shelley. Mr. Mayor, I hereby move that the mayor and city council introduce an ordinance to repeal and replace chapter 216, article 2, sidewalks and curbs of the code of the city of Hagerstown. This code amendment will change the responsibility of constructing sidewalk replacements from the abutting landowner to the city of Hagerstown, with exceptions listed herein. The replacement of curbs will be funded by the stormwater utility fee, and the replacement of sidewalks by savings in the general fund where stormwater program activities are no longer funded.
It's Emily, I second.
All right, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 5-0. Motion carries. Approval of user agreement with Hagerstown Area Youth Soccer League.
This is Shelley. Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for mayor and council approval of a resolution to enter into a user agreement with the Hagerstown Area Youth Soccer League. The HAYSL will have maintenance responsibility and non-exclusive priority scheduling use of 3 multi-purpose fields in Fairgrounds Park. This agreement is for the period of April 7th, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. Users shall have the right to renew this agreement for up to 4 additional one-year terms beginning January 1st, 2021. The agreement allows HAYSL to sublet the fields to other user groups.
A second, it's Emily.
Emily, second. Discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Kristen.
Hmm?
So under the renewal for the up to 4 additional years, when I read the language, it doesn't appear that it is specified that gives the city the sole right to, I guess, say no to the additional any of the additional 4-year terms.
Shelley, mute your. Now have Kristen repeat that.
Try it again, Kristen.
Just.
Are you there? Okay. If you go to item number 3 and renewal, which I'm assuming is referring to those additional 4 one-year terms.
Right.
It appears to be written to the favor of the user, not the city.
In that we can terminate it? Is that what you mean?
No, in item number 3, renewal.
Yeah, I think it's that basically we're saying they'll have it for that entire term as long as they can want to continue there. But there is language later on in the agreement that allows us to terminate it if we feel like we need to.
Right, I read that language, and it seems that language reads that we have to have cause.
Right.
I guess I'm just curious why we would write the agreement to the benefit of the user rather than the city as it applies to the decision to terminate at any point at the end of any of those additional annual terms.
You
I mean, I can see writing it in a manner that says, look, we're going to guarantee you it this year, but it doesn't, The city then can say, okay, we can guarantee it the next year. Every time we lock into it, we can guarantee it to the user. But why we would write, you can request renewal for each of those additional years. Why would we structure it so that there's no opportunity anywhere in here that I see that the city at any point in that 5 years has the ability to say, no, we're going in another direction.
So basically, in item 3, you wanted to say that the user must submit written request for renewal 90 days prior to the end of the then current term, and then have a sentence in there that says at the city can choose to approve or not approve the renewal at that point.
Right. The way it's written right now, it says as long as the user meets these 3 things, we have to say yes.
We could modify it and have you approve it later this month.
Okay.
And it isn't that I want to say no to this particular one. When I read that, it was just curious why we would ever write that in that way for any group.
You want to make a motion to table, Kristen?
I just think that language should be structured. I would not vote in favor of this agreement the way it's structured.
No, Kristen, why don't you move to table? I agree with you.
I move to table.
Second.
Second.
A motion from Kristen to table, a second from Blue. Any discussion? All in favor to table?
Aye.
Aye, motion's unanimous, 5-0, tabled until we can come back with some different language. Thank you, Rob.
And the next.
Yeah. We're gonna table the approval of a user agreement with the YMCA because it's based on. So, Kristen, you want to make that motion?
Move to table.
Okay,
Second.
second by Lou.
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Rodney. Okay, next up is the 2020, summer play camp operations.
It's Emily. Mr. Mayor, I hereby move for the approval of resolutions to authorize the execution of contracts with the Robert W. Johnson Community Center, Inc., Hagerstown YMCA, and Girls, Inc. of Washington County to operate summer play camps for the 2020 season from June 22nd through August 21st. Each camp will serve approximately 60 to 100 youths per day. Funding is from the Parks and Recreation operating budget.
This is Austin, second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, motion carries 5-0. Approval of parking lease with the Byron Center LLC.
Mr. Mayor, this is Kristen. I hereby move for the approval of a resolution to approve a parking lease agreement between the City of Hagerstown and the Bryant Center LLC for the rental of 6 parking spaces located at 49 to 53 West Franklin Street for use by the general public. The term of this lease is monthly. The monthly rent to be paid to the Bryant Center LLC is $150 and no cents.
Second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to abstain.
I figured you would, Lou. Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 4-0. Approve an amendment to a license agreement with Central Chemical Respondent Group. Wait a minute. Here we go. Approve resolution addendum to purchase agreement for 36 to 40 North Potomac Street. Sorry.
Mr. Mayor,
Sorry, go ahead, Austin.
I hereby move for the mayor and city council to approve a resolution authorizing an addendum to the purchase agreement for the sale of property located at 3640 North Potomac Street. This city-owned property is currently under contract to be sold to 339 Antietam LLC. The addendum will add an economic feasibility study provision for the buyer with a deadline of July 10, 2020, and will extend the settlement deadline from July 31, 2020 to October 1, 2020.
This is Shelley, second.
All right, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carries 5-0. Approval of an amendment to a license chemical responding group.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move to approve a second amendment of a license agreement between the city of Hagerstown and the Central Chemical Respondent Group for the installation of groundwater monitoring wells in the public rights of way in the vicinity of the Central Chemical property. This amendment allows for additional wells on Cassanoff Avenue and Matthew Court.
Don't forget to mute.
This is Shelley, second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries 5-0. Approval of a memorandum of understanding with the Maryland Department of Transportation.
This is Shelley. Mr. Mayor, I hereby move to authorize the city to enter into an agreement with the Maryland Department of Transportation on behalf of the state of Maryland to receive a grant in the amount of $156,000 with a city match of $39,000 for the installation of 2 radar speed boards on Maryland Avenue, 2 radar speed boards on Summit Avenue, and a crosswalk beacon on Northern Avenue at Fountaindale Elementary School.
It's Emily, I second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. And approval of Hagerstown Suns fireworks schedule for 2020.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move that mayor and council approve 4 regular season fireworks shows after Hagerstown Suns baseball games on 6/19/20, 7/3/20, 7/31/20, and 8/14/20, and that the mayor and council's approval will exempt these shows from the city of Hagerstown's noise ordinance under section 155-5 of the code of the city of Hagerstown.
It's Emily, I second.
All right, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. All right, we'll move out of special session into our work session. First on the agenda is the budget discussion with Scott, Michelle, and Brooke.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start. Can everybody hear me okay?
Okay.
I know you can. Just stay away from them.
I'm gonna-
Okay, I'll go ahead and start here. Certainly, this is not the budget presentation that we or I expected to be providing you as of this time last month. As the budget message in the budget book was developed during February and early March. I'd like to provide you the motivation of that message when it was written and then address the environment post March 16th. This budget was presented with 2 main focus areas in mind: economic development, public safety. While these will continue to be a focus, due to these uncertain times, the abilities to provide what was originally intended in both of these areas remains unclear. Due to what I will explain later, the times pre-March 16th, we're going to require a full reevaluation of city governmental operations to address significant budgetary issues moving forward. Though receiving tentatively positive news from the state assessment office in December regarding our main source of revenue, which is property tax, the proceeds from assessed values of real and personal property The constant yield notice showing these estimated revenues received in January told a very different story. The news was that our assessed values, instead of rising significantly throughout the city, remained relatively stagnant over the last year. This was an unexpected and unpleasant surprise to us that required another complete evaluation of this budget being presented to you. To that end, I identified 4 themes for the coming fiscal year that remain relevant to our current situation, but are also clouded in uncertainty. Number 1, reinvention and rethinking of city government. The city, as stated before, continues to find itself still struggling to recover from the assessed value declines of the previous decade. The city, however, has continued to provide and in many areas expand our services to the community. We will need to look at all of our city operations to ensure that we are working in the most efficient and cost-effective manner we can. We must also look at how we handle governmental mandates and do our best to provide an appreciable benefit to the citizen. A good example of this is the stormwater management program. Though adding a yearly fee to our city parcels, this program will allow the city to comply with federal and state mandates while also providing significant benefits to our taxpayer. Perhaps the biggest benefit is taking over the responsibility for curb and sidewalk replacement from the parcel owner, saving potentially thousands of dollars for the taxpayer and having this work performed by the city. We will also be able to offer credits to those larger customers that are already working to provide stormwater reclamation and maintenance on their parcels. This program has been developed with joint public and private cooperation, and if approved, would be implemented at some date in FY21. This is only one of what will be many reviews of governmental operations, as our times then, and especially now, will require us to work as smart as possible. Number 2, raising up our neighborhoods. With real and personal property tax revenue being the main source of revenue for the city, it is imperative that we continue to search for ways to raise up all of our neighborhoods, but especially those in our urban core. We must be more aggressive in our neighborhoods to identify, abate, rehabilitate, and/or demolish blight that is holding the livability of our neighborhoods down. Our new chronic tax sale property program is just now lifting off and will be the first step in a continuing process of dealing with blight in our city. Our public safety operations have taken a more aggressive stance over the last year in an environment of increased activity to make our neighborhoods and downtown safer. Those dividends are already being seen and will continue. We will continue to bring to the table ideas that, in conjunction with our public and private partners, get us on a path to sustainable growth in our communities. Third, stewardship of our taxpayer dollar. As relevant and necessary as this was before the pandemic reached our community, it's even more so now. As we face the uncertainty of revenues over the next 6 to 9 months at a minimum, we must ensure that we provide the community transparency and stewardship of the spending of their tax dollar. This will require all of city government to ask the questions: does this expenditure meet the requirements of a core service to the community? And 2, does it increase value to our citizens? This has always been a tenet of service to the taxpayer, but it's even more needed now. We also must continue to keep in the forefront of our operation the providing of excellent, outstanding, and extraordinary customer service to our citizens and customers. We've made great strides over the past year in this area, but we cannot take our eyes off of this service as we move forward as a city. We may not have been as successful at times as we have at others, but we maintain to put our citizens and customers first in all operations of city government. Number 4, maintaining momentum of economic development. Ultimately, all we do as a city operation reverts directly to the retention and desirability of people to work, live, and play in the city of Hagerstown. This means more now than it ever has. We are fortunate to have developed some great private partners over the past year, including North Point, ConAgra, and many others. We are also fortunate to have maintained our partners and friends that have invested in our city over the decades and who continue to be leaders in our overall mission for economic development. However, we must never forget the foundation and backbone of our economic sustainability, the small business, as we move forward into the future. They've been hit the hardest in this economic shutdown, and we will do all that we can do to provide as much help as this budget or whatever budget we end up with can do for them. We have worked hard as a community to get to this point, and we must maintain this momentum. I want to take a moment to address our great city staff. Every department in this city has stepped up for years to make the best of what has been a tough economic environment. Our utilities maintain a high quality of reliable standard of service in water, wastewater, and electric. Our parks remain arguably the best in the region and the state. Our Public Works Group continues to show a high commitment and service in maintaining our streets, parking areas, and buildings. Our City Hall staff is second to none in the work and service they provide, both internally and to the taxpayer. For this work, I again thank you all and know that your commitment and service to the city of Hagerstown is appreciated beyond measure. Looking forward, all in all, during the hard and the better times, the city has continued to provide our citizens, businesses, and stakeholders with quality services. There is no doubt that we are in uncertain times, and for all of us, the future is at best vague. However, there remains opportunity in uncertainty. The bones of this city will not allow for anything else than forward movement. We will work together, both as a government and a community, to get through this and emerge stronger. We may not get full agreement for what we do, but as I've said many times over the past year, and especially over the last month and a half, we make decisions that we feel are in the best interest of our citizens and our staff. This will remain our philosophy during this budget cycle and for years to come. I'll turn this over to Michelle for more details on the numbers, but would like to thank all of our city department managers and directors for the help they have given me, not only during this budget preparation season, but for the past year I've been in this position. Nobody warned me that the first year as an administrator, I'd be dealing with a plague. Thank you all for that, by the way. Special thanks to Michelle Hepburn, Brooke Garver, and all the accounting and finance staff in their preparation of this budget document. This is my 16th budget to be a part of for the city of Hagerstown, but it's the first where I've gotten a front row seat to the great work that department does in this process. Thank you very much. Michelle, go ahead and we'll take any questions you have for either of us after Michelle is done.
Sorry, everyone. I just want to say, I will similarly echo a lot of Scott's statements in that typically when we get to March 31st, the entire accounting department, as well as myself, breathe a tremendous sigh of relief. We celebrate, we take a day or two just to breathe. However, I believe Scott kept checking in with me for the last 2 weeks, and so did other directors, to express concern if we would be able to meet the March 31 deadline and still produce the document, which we did. The fact that we were able to do that was tremendous. However, this year we really were not able to even breathe a sigh of relief because, quite frankly, this budget document, while the general fund budget is balanced and actually has a deficit of $3,000 for fiscal year 21, much has changed from today back to when we balanced, and that was mid-February. So
You meant to say surplus.
a surplus, I'm so sorry, of 3,000, yes, I did.
No, we can't. That's-
I know we cannot have a deficit, so.
Got the ticker on that.
So what I would like to do maybe is just take an opportunity to cover the flow of the budget book. This document is available out online. It is a massive document. There is a tremendous amount of information. And every year it's very difficult and a hard document for a lot of people to navigate, I'll be completely honest. The document itself is probably about 500 plus pages. The majority of the information, a nice executive summary, high-level summary, is all found in section 1, actually pages 1 to 46. And we keep extra copies of that, of those 46 pages here on site in Burhan's room, the council chambers, as well as the city clerk's office. We have disseminated that via email to mayor and council, as well as to our directors. We do still have several copies of the actual budget book document itself. and we are getting those in the hands of all the departments. Again, while I would like to cover a high-level summary of the fiscal year 21 budget and what is included in here, I am going to follow up immediately after that to ask and actually recommend that we move forward and adopt this budget as it is proposed, knowing that if we agree to do that, I can work with Donna, we'd still do our public notice, we'd do the ordinances, but then we would spend the next few weeks, instead of sitting 6 weeks and reviewing all the data that is in this document that is outdated at this point, we can spend that time every week talking about new revenue projections, what new strategies we have in place, and where we're going to offset those revenue reductions that we're currently anticipating. So first off, the budget document itself, the very first section, section 1, is a high-level overview. The first 46 pages, as I have mentioned, really provides a high-level summary, lots of little charts, information. The layout starts with city-wide information, and then it narrows down from that to the general fund highlights, and then highlights from every single major fund that we have throughout the city. Once you get through all that information in the first 46 pages, and again, there's lots of charts, then we have an organizational structures. We have our goals, both mayor and council, and our departmental goals. From there, the rest of the book is actually split and segregated into different funds. So first, section 2 is the general fund, lots of information, revenue. This is one of the few places you will see information at a departmental level. From section 2, we go into section 3, and that's the enterprise fund section. Very much like the general fund, other than it literally starts with all the utilities. And then you will see a little bit more departmentalized information there on each of those. Section 4 is special revenue funds. The special revenue fund is by far our largest is the Community Block Development Grant Fund, as well as our Economic Redevelopment Fund. Section 5 is our service and trust funds, and those are simply our workers' comp as well as our health and dental insurance, because we broke them out separately. Section 6 is our financial projections section, and that is where we have high-level information. It will not show actual dollars. The tables and the charts there have a little bit more information. Everything is rounded off to the thousands, and it's a 5-year projection for each of the major funds. Again, high-level detail. You won't see any departmental information there. Section 7, by far the largest section of the entire book. It's our capital improvement program. It includes all of the CIPs, not just for the general fund, but all of our other funds, as well as detailed information, a sheet for every single project. Last but not least, from there, we go to section 8, which is a user fee schedule. And then at the very end, there's a fiscal policy and glossary section. Everybody okay so far? All right, so when we started this process, I believe I was last here, the beginning of February, it seems so far ago, we had a deficit at that point in time, and that again occurs every year when we stop to take a moment just to say where we are, what's been entered. We started at that point with a $3.8 million deficit and worked our way. The majority of the changes, I just want to high level hit those. There is a brief paragraph and information in section 1 on page 16, once you get to the general fund highlights, that just, again, summarizes exactly what I'm going to say. So basically how we got from a $3.8 million deficit to a $3,000 surplus. We reduced general fund or pay-go transfers for capital projects of $491,000. I reappropriated $1.6 million. Again, that's $1.6 million of general fund fiscal year 19 surplus and prior year surpluses in order to continue capital projects and infrastructure requests. We did many various revenue decreases, specifically that had to do with our property tax information. At the point that we came before you on February the 4th, we were still assuming and under the impression we were receiving good news on assessed values and that we were seeing a 4% growth or increase. We received the notice on February 14th that instead of having a 4% increase, we were actually having a 0.3% decrease. So we took a step back, we took a deep breath, and after lots of conversation and review of trends, after review of some additional reports, we decided that we really didn't think that we were going to see a 0.3% decrease. So we reduced from a 4% growth assessed value to a 2% growth assessed value. That dollar difference was about $530,000. So if for some reason July 1, we don't see a 2% growth from our assessed values, we'll have to find another $530,000. We already have Plan B on that though. One of the other things that I did was take another look at the health insurance fund. We had a fiscal year 19 surplus, and I made sure that with the fund balance policy that's in place, we could still make another one-time transfer of the health insurance fund surplus back to general fund, electric fund, water fund, and wastewater fund. Did a serious adjustment in the salary and the benefit enhancements from when we first presented in February on the 4th to what's presented in the proposed budget book. And then also one of the other things was just an overall billing department allocation. The billing, just as a reminder, the billing department was previously under the utility division. It was switched and transitioned in responsibility. It's now under the general fund. And one of the things that I needed to do was go back and look at that allocation and spread the cost out of the billing department to the places that had all of their transactions. 3.8 million. I think that brings me to about a $300,000 difference to get to the surplus. And that was just decreases across many areas. Every department came forward, assisted and helped. And after maybe one general reminder or a second request and a third request that said, okay, really last call, I need some additional money, all of the departments were willing to help make that happen. So we've got a $3,000 surplus. To obtain that $3,000 surplus, there is no change in the real estate tax rate from our current fiscal year 20 to what was proposed for fiscal year 21. And as just a reminder, our real estate tax rates is 1.002 per $100 of assessed value for all properties excluding apartments, 1.032, and that's $1.03, 1.032 per $100 of assessed value for the apartments. This means that the corporate personal property tax rate, which is a default of 2.5 times our real estate rate, will remain at $2.50 per $100 of assessed value. As of the point that we balanced for this proposed budget, I did not include a separate tax tier for corporate personal property for the utility companies. And that is definitely something that is still on the list, something that Scott reminds me of, and I know I'm going to get at least one reminder this evening. I have not lost sight of that. I have it in all my Plan B contingencies. As I mentioned, for the general fund, we have assumed an assessed value growth overall of 2% from fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 21. Cable franchise revenue. This is a small component of our total charges for services, but there were some FCC regulations that may jeopardize a portion of that revenue. We get $334,000 a year normally. The proposed budget keeps that $334,000 and assumes that there's going to be no change in what we're actually receiving because of it. The next big one, and it's going to be one that we talk about in coming weeks, highway user revenue. So our highway user revenue in fiscal year 20, we took a step back because for the first time, we were to receive 1.68 million in highway user revenue, which was very close to the annual allotment of 1.9 million we were receiving in fiscal year 9 before so much drastic changes had occurred. And so Once all those drastic changes had occurred, we had moved all of the highway user monies that we received directly into the capital improvement projects so that whatever money we got went straight into infrastructure. There are other eligible costs, and one of those costs that this revenue can help offset is to pay for annual debt service. So basically, we did a lot of projects, and I want to say alleys is one of those. Years where we received very limited amount of highway user revenue. We weren't able to complete and do necessary renovation. And so we secured a bond, and we pay for that bond back over a 30-year period. The monies that we use to repay that bond, we can help is an eligible use of highway user revenue. So in fiscal year 20, we included $275,000 in the general fund and took that away from capital projects. In fiscal year 21, at the time that we were balanced, we were anticipating receiving $1.7 million. We included $80,000 in the general fund to help offset annual debt service requirements, and the other $1.6 million is in about 4 or 5 capital improvement projects. I will say, spoiler alert, highway user revenue is definitely one of those big ticket items that is in jeopardy with everything that is currently going on with this COVID pandemic. I mentioned about a one-time transfer from the health insurance fund. So there's $380,000 specifically in the general fund for that transfer in fiscal year 21. Also, there's utilization of general fund balance reserve. In section 1, there is a new chart. And for all those out there, it's actually in section 1 on page 9, and broke down for the most part. The general fund balance reserve that's being utilized is in 3 unique different sections. One, we had several projects in fiscal year 20 and in fiscal year 19 that we had approved both the projects and had approved general fund balance reserve monies to help fund those. We have 2 of those projects that were not yet completed in 20. We're carrying forward those for about $160,000. We had a surplus in fiscal year 19 in the general fund and reappropriated $1.4 million of that for brand new fiscal year 21 proposed projects. Now, if something were to occur and in fiscal year 20, the current year, we have a deficit, that means that surplus that we received in 19 is going to be reallocated and used up first by what happens in fiscal year 20. So I guess I'm saying all that to say that more than likely, I'm going to ask every single department to wait to move forward with capital projects instead of starting July 1. Even now, some would be starting with bids and consent agenda items as we gear up for May through June. But because we had so much that we were counting on utilizing out of fund balance reserves, I do not feel comfortable, given the environment right now, that we will continue to get a surplus for fiscal year 20, and I don't want to jeopardize our fund balance reserve. Last but not least, we had $800,000 that we weren't necessarily reallocating, but were utilizing towards Basil Boulevard reconstruction, and that was, for the most part, forward funding. We were anticipating replenishing that with future year revenue source from the growth and the development that occurs out there. In this general fund budget, we do still have expenses of $405,000 for the 911 center contribution that the city makes. There is no changes in the general fund full-time staffing above any currently approved mayor and council levels. Our salary and benefit increases over fiscal year 20 budget amount to $2.1 million, which is 6.8% higher than fiscal year 20. A portion of that is definitely in benefits, but another portion is in salaries. Much like I stopped on several of these other bullets, I gotta say, I'm not comfortable moving forward with anything July 1 for a large dollar impact if we don't know what's going to happen to our revenue sources. Last but not least, even before all of this occurred, in our financial projections section and looking at the future and this, and not just fiscal year 21, but what would occur over the next several years. It was looking like fiscal year 22 was going to be at a deficit of 3.6 million if no other changes are made. No changes in services, no changes in staffing. If we continued at a higher percentage on salary increases and benefit increases. Again, I'm not sure that at this point we should be so focused on that as much as we are spending our time and focusing on fiscal year 20 and 21. Aside from the general fund, the three major utility groups, the electric fund, just that our wholesale power contract is in place, was in place through May 22nd, 2022, excuse me, but we already have an extension that would carry that through May of 2024. And just as a reminder, that wholesale power contract represents 75.6% of all the expenses in our electric fund. There was one change in staffing from fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 21 in the electric fund, and that was a position was unfunded. And at the time of the proposed budget, the electric fund had a $51,000 surplus. The water fund, just as a reminder for both water and wastewater, we did a cost rate model that was approved that pretty much scheduled out for a 5-year period rate increases, what the rates are going to be and any increases. Those are still in effect and then go through fiscal year 24. So the water fund increase for fiscal year 21 is a 3% over the current year service charges. No changes in any full-time staffing levels in the water fund. And at the point of print, we had a $54,000 surplus we were anticipating for fiscal year 21. Wastewater, their increases of 2% in service fees in fiscal year 21 per the approved rate model. No changes in full-time staffing there, and they were sitting at a surplus of 1.1 million. One of our non-major utility funds, but still by far one that has a tremendous amount of transactions and activity, is our parking fund. We had rates approved with $2 annual increases for both fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22. No changes in any staffing levels in fiscal year 21 at the time of print. But I would just say as a general reminder, that is a 24/7 operation with only 2 full-time staff persons. That is still something we need to evaluate and bring back to the table because realistically, you can't continue to run a 24/7 operation with 2 full-time staff. There is a third parking deck project within this budget document. Anticipated that not necessarily construction, but some activity would begin with that and expenses in fiscal year 21 with construction being completed in fiscal year 23. And then when you get to the financial projection section, starting in fiscal year 23, there would be both revenue and operating expenses for that third parking deck. At the time of print, the parking fund had $123,000 surplus estimated for fiscal year 21. Whew. So that was very quick. That was very high level. In all honesty, what I would say is, this pandemic, it's not just an economic crisis. It's a social crisis. It's a demographic crisis. And while we know that there's definitive revenue sources that are going to be impacted, I mean, we've already seen it here at the city, hotel motel tax revenue. Hotel motels, a lot of them, some are shut down and there's a ban. Admissions and amusement tax revenue, places are closed. We're not going to receive it. State income tax revenue. And while that's not such I don't want to say it's the driving factor or a primary source of revenue for the general fund, we were anticipating, an increase in that. But with unemployment at all-time record highs, and if businesses do not reopen, I'm going to say our state income tax revenue, if people are unemployed, When they file tax returns, there's no money there. That means the state gets no money, we get no money. Highway user revenue, we received from MML preliminary notice to expect that highway user revenue projections would change. However, they said to expect it wouldn't just change for fiscal year 21, but it will also change for fiscal year 20. So we're working through what that's going to mean and what that's going to look like, but realistically, we might not know that till July or August. And quite frankly, they tell us at the beginning of the year, you're going to get 1.68 million. I look to Rodney and I say, Rodney, you're good to go, do your projects. Guess what? Rodney's already spent almost all of that money in fiscal year 20. And to date, as of today, we've received 800,000 of that in cash, which means the balance that they haven't paid to us, if the state needs it or they don't receive their revenue stream, if they take that away, I'm already going to have a very unexpected hit in fiscal year 20. Property taxes is businesses shut down, as there's delays in paying for mortgages and escrows. We can assume that our cash flow is going to be a little bit slower coming in. We won't see the majority. We won't see such a large majority in July like we typically do. People are going to have to make hard decisions. What's going to be paid first? So again, I said all that to say the proposed budget, the way that it is currently, without a doubt, has to be. So if we could simply approve it as is, because there was no changes in services, no changes in staffing, no big surprises, that we could spend our time and efforts coming back and working collaboratively all together on one piece forward. Questions?
I will tell you that yesterday on a phone call with Congressman Throne, we had a conversation about a phase 4 stimulus package and what that may look like to help municipalities. Hopefully, they're getting with a lot of us to try to figure out where we can, where we're going to take our biggest hit at and how we can put in for some of this. Again, hopefully, if it's included in the next phase stimulus package to help us. So I know I know you and Scott are keeping an eye on everything very closely, and I appreciate that. So we'll have an idea at least come, probably the first week of July of what we're actually facing. So thank you very much for that. Anybody else?
Shelley?
You.
So I guess the last question is, are you good with us proceeding, scheduling a public hearing, assuming that we can move forward as is, and then looking to come back in the weeks with follow-up conversations, or do you want me to go back and literally say next week I'm coming back and we're going to hit this part of section 1, this part of section 2? Or do you want my focus the next couple for this week?
I would have to say that given the ability of every member to reach out to you and Scott individually, with questions, suggestions, things like that. And then, you can respond in kind during the week, and then we can do an update on Tuesday of what we focused on and, what some of the suggestions were and if there were any way to implement them. So I believe that's probably the easiest way to do it. That way everybody gets, they can get you their recommendations or questions or whatever, and then we can focus on that as an update on Tuesdays. That sound good to you, Scott?
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds good to me, Blue.
Yeah, this is
Thanks,
Austin.
Michelle.
This is Austin. I have every bit of faith in Michelle's and her department's activities putting this together, and I think at this point in time, the business as usual slogging through every page of the budget is probably not a good thing. It's not gonna do anything for us at this point. So I think I agree with the mayor. We all have the ability to reach out and ask questions individually to get those answered.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you, Michelle. Rodney, transportation priorities.
Hello again. Well, everyone's reeling from the pandemic and many projects are in doubt, of course, but I still think it's worthwhile submitting a letter to the State Highway Administration that outlines our transportation priorities. This letter often has the same projects on it every year, such as 81, but it also has projects that get done. And the best example of that would be the dual highway, where they've completed all the sidewalk improvements. They've made improvements to Cleveland Avenue, which was kind of a hotspot for pedestrian accidents. So this letter does matter, and it's probably the best thing we can do to submit to have transportation improvements by State Highway in our community. So I would offer to you that we submit a letter based on the priorities that we've outlined in our memo. Just going through those really quickly. The first would be the Eastern Boulevard corridor, and that would basically be just supporting the State Highway and the county working together to widen Eastern Boulevard north of Jefferson and also widening the Jefferson intersection. That project was scheduled to be this year. I'm not sure where it stands with the way things are right now, but that would be a project that would be a benefit to the whole Eastern Boulevard corridor. Of course, 81 widening has been discussed many times. I don't need to go through that in any more detail. The tourism signs, once we get through the grip of the pandemic, this is something I really want to push for because most communities in Maryland have new and modern tourism signs, but we don't. And we need to get those done. We've been working with State Highway for a couple of years. They promised them they'd be done this year, and I think we need to make that a priority in our letter to the state. Then there's all the programs that fund sidewalks, safe routes to school, those kind of things, which we've received upwards of $2 million from over the last couple of years. And I think we should ask that they continue. And then Michelle outlined the highway user revenue as consumption is down, therefore taxes paid are down. So there's no doubt that our highway user revenue will be in jeopardy again after we finally seemed like we got to a point where it was stable. Exactly. No one's traveling. So, and the only other thing that I wanted to mention, I forgot to put in the memo, frankly, is the Park Circle Railroad crossings. I've been after State Highway for close to 3 or 4 years now, 4 years, to upgrade those crossings. They're in terrible condition. State Highway has agreed to pay for them, but we don't want them to lose sight of that in the current economic conditions. So I'd like to put that in the letter as well. So if you're okay with these priorities, or if you have something else you want to add, I'll put together a letter for the mayor's signature. We'll send it to Secretary Greg Slater at State Highway.
Everybody good? All right, we'll move forward then. Thank you, Robbie. Comprehensive rezoning request. Megan.
Make sure you unmute.
Okay, hello. So we are here to review some additional requests we have received to be added to the comprehensive rezoning, the package that we already had the public hearing for. So we have 2 different requests. We can vote to include both or none or just one, or to pass the rezoning as it currently is. So the first request is the Shell property on Eastern Boulevard. At the public hearing, as you guys recall, we received a request from Dan Chowell for the 6-acre property on the east side of Eastern Boulevard near Antietam Drive to be included in the rezoning. It's currently zoned R-Mod, which is moderate density residential. And they are requesting to be rezoned to R-Med, which is medium density residential. And that request is just based on the setbacks and density requirements for each zoning district. So R-Med requires smaller lot sizes and therefore greater density is allowed. It also allows townhouses while the R-Mod does not. So in your memo, you guys have an attachment for the floodplain. So there's obviously floodplain on the property, which poses a development constraint. And then we also received during that 10-day public input period after the last public hearing, we received input from county residents on Antietam Drive who live adjacent to the property. I attached that in your all's memo as well. And they're opposed to the rezoning to R-Med. They have comments and signatures in that attachment as well. So the Planning Commission's consensus was that including this would go against zoning practices just because the surrounding city land is zoned R-Mod or moderate density and the surrounding county land is zoned RS, which is residential suburban. So they feel that R-Mod is still the best fit for this area. So they recommend that this be excluded from the rezoning. And then I'll just go ahead and go on to the next one and we can discuss both together. So again, during that 10-day public input period, we received another request from Trey Alter for his property on Security Road. Again, it's zoned R-Med and they are requesting a rezoning to it's zoned R-Mod and they're requesting a rezoning to R-Med. I quoted his email, but essentially they believe that a zoning classification allowing for the development of townhomes is appropriate here. It has several townhouse developments near it, with one being contiguous. And then again, this site does have similar constraints with floodplain. However, the key difference is that this development is bounded by, or this site is bounded by townhouse developments on two sides. It has Pangbourne Park townhomes to the east and Park Overlook townhomes to the west. So because the surrounding area has comparable density, the Planning Commission recommends that this parcel be included in the comp rezoning. And then in addition to that, the Planning Commission recommends that the Pangbourne townhome development is also rezoned to R-Med, just for more consistency in that area in general. So we can discuss both, but just to conclude, they recommend excluding the property on Eastern and including the property on Security Road along with Pangbourne townhomes in the rezoning.
So keep it R-Mod. For Chapel.
Yeah, Planning Commission's recommending to keep the Chowell property R-Mod and then to rezone the Security Road property to R-Med, along with Pangbourne townhomes also rezoned to R-Med.
This is Kristen. Why are we getting these two now? In other words, I'm assuming you had some length of process of evaluation for these comprehensive plan changes, and therefore had some discussions. Why are we just now getting these two requests from these two property owners, which what I feel is kind of like at the last minute?
So the first one we received as part of public input at our public hearing on February 25th. So generally after the public hearing, we come to you all with what we've received and we decide whether or not to take that input or to pass it as is. During that 10-day input period, we got an additional request from whomever was watching the hearing and submitted their request in that 10-day period after the hearing. And then we've discussed this with Planning Commission, I believe it was 2 meetings ago. So that's why it's just kind of late with the delay of everything. But it was part of the public input process for the hearing.
I guess I'm just curious why in either occasion, I mean, the Planning Commission already did a fairly extensive evaluation. Planning staff provided, I'm sure, lots of documentation and work associated with that broad evaluation, and now we're getting a request for change from 2 properties that I'm presuming Planning Commission already looked at as part of this larger review?
Right, so when they first initiated the comprehensive rezoning, it's based on our future land use plan, which is in our comprehensive plan. So basically, the future land use for both of these areas is a medium density residential. So essentially, either zoning follows our plan. So they didn't initially include it because it's, I guess, meets the plan as is, but the change would also meet the requirements of the plan, which is why they entertained it.
Anybody else have anything they want to add at this point? So we're okay with leaving Shaul as Armad and changing Alter to Ahmed.
No, it's Chris. I'm
We-
definitely not.
If we did vote to include one, we would have to have another public hearing.
Kristen had a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Kristen.
I just, I'm opposed. I mean, we did an entire evaluation and now we're going to go through public hearings again. You know, the owners welcome at their discretion to come back later and submit a request for rezoning of that specific piece of property.
Okay, how does anybody else feel about that?
Mr. Lou, I don't have a problem with the recommendation.
Lou, can you say it again?
I do not have a problem with the recommendation.
Emily?
I don't have a problem with the recommendation.
I don't either. I agree with Blue and, sorry.
Yeah, I understand Kristen's point. Looking at the list of signatures on here, I don't have a problem with it at this point. I think we can come back later on if we need to make an adjustment. I don't see any point in dragging out the approval of the land management code that we've been working on for so long at this point, though.
So what amounts to is that we're going with the recommendation of planning commission. Shake your.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
So just to clarify, we'll be adding the property on security to the rezoning, which means we will hold another public hearing on
Gotcha.
April 28th. Is that the date? For just that parcel.
Yes,
Have
that
a
parcel.
public hearing for the whole package. We'll hold a
Right,
public
just
hearing
that
so that adjacent property owners to this parcel have an opportunity.
Gotcha.
And this is Kristen. This is for the sake of allowing that property to be developed with the opportunity for townhouses, comparable to some of the examples you used, like Pangbourne and the other one, which have been received with some measure of concern.
Yeah, so the Pangbourne townhomes and Park Overlook townhomes both border this property, which is why the planning commission felt that townhome development in that area would be comparable. And then
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying, I don't know that we have a need
Pangbourne
for.
as well.
Yeah, I'm saying based on the success of those, I'm not sure that we need any more of that.
Gotcha. Okay, so 28, just on this parcel.
Yeah, and that would be for the parcel on Security Road as well as Pangbourne townhomes, both being rezoned from Armad to Ahmed.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Yeah.
This is Lou speaking. I have one issue. I'm concerned about how we have a public hearing on April 28th. given, the status of the world.
Well, I guess what we're gonna have to do,
We're gonna work on that.
Yeah, see what happens between now and then. We may have to push it off another week or two only because of, the ability to gather within 6 feet.
Well, one thing we're trying to do along these lines is to get with other municipalities to see how they are looking to do public input. We've kind of formed a little collective group to discuss best practices, and each of us are trying different things related to citizen comments and public hearings. So it's our intention that by the 28th, we will, or our next public input session. Yeah, Board of Zoning Appeals is a good example. We'll have a method to do that.
That good enough, Lou?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Next up is a review of upcoming annexations.
Okay, so we have 4 upcoming annexations for introduction on April 28th. And the first is A 2020-01. It's the annexation of Review and Herald. This will be occurring simultaneously with development review occurring at the county at the same time. It's 55 West Oak Ridge Drive, tax map 57, block 3, parcels 177 and 635. The applicant is Review and Herald Publishing Co. The property is 126.09 acres. County zoning is I, which is highway interchange, and the proposed city zoning would be IMU, which is industrial mixed use. I've attached each plan and zoning exhibit. As I move on to A 2020-02, I just want to clarify the plat that I included in the attachments is being finalized, but the zoning exhibit will look more like the shape of that polygon because the A 2020-01 annexation gets us to those properties in A 2020-02. If we take in part of 70, it will get us to those parcels. So just to clarify, if you see that distinction on the zoning exhibit, that will be a more polygon when we finalize those meets and bounds. So A 2020-02 is annexation of I-70 and MDOT, MBA, and MSP state facilities. The addresses are 18300 Cole Henry K. Douglas Drive, 18306 Cole Henry K. Douglas Drive, and 18345 Cole Henry K. Douglas Drive. That's tax map 57, parcels 540, 541, and 456. So the city is the applicant for this one. Like I said, the previous annexation gets us contiguous to these parcels. The total would be 31.79 acres. Again, the county zoning is HI, highway interchange. And the proposed city zoning would be institutional, which is our new zoning district. That's what the future land use map recommends. Another comparable zoning would be CR, commercial regional. The planning commission's recommendation includes an either or. So either zoning would work. They prefer institutional. If the county is not satisfied with institutional, then CR, commercial regional, would work as well. And then moving on to A 2020-03 and A 2020-04. These are annexations of previously existing pre-annexation agreements out by the Valley Mall. So A 2020-03 is annexation of Valley Mall properties on Cole Road. The addresses are 17225 to 17239 Cole Road, 17145 Cole Road, and 17111 Cole Road. And that is tax map 48, parcel 701, 919, and 952. So this is pre-annexation agreement, case number 2004-03, activated by the city. It's 34.31 acres. The county zoning is BG, which is business general. And the proposed city zoning is CR, which is commercial regional. For A 2020-04, this is the annexation of Valley Mall properties on Valley Mall Road. The addresses are 17270 Valley Mall Road, 17280 Valley Mall Road, and 17276 Valley Mall Road. tax map 48 parcels 935, 595, and 875. So this one is pre-annexation agreement, WS 2005-20, activated by the city. It's 4.88 acres. County zoning is PB, which is planned business, and the proposed city zoning, again, would be CR, which is commercial regional. So those 4 annexation resolutions would be introduced at the end of April, and then we will schedule a public hearing. And then annexations become effective 45 days following the approval. So that's just a summary of those 4. If anyone has any questions about any of the properties, I can answer them.
Any questions, guys?
Do we have the resources to provide police and fire in all those additional locations?
Yeah, the city will be providing police and fire service for all of those properties once annexed. But there's no change in ownership of the roads for any of them.
But your question specifically, I'm sure, was given the state of our agencies currently, that we have the resources to come September be able to supply police and fire those areas.
Right. I was just curious, like, what the call volume in those areas is like, and if it's going to cause an issue for us.
We have kept the directors updated with the planned annexations for this year. And so the police and fire chief are well aware of what we're proposing. We also routed these annexation plans to them in case they had any issues. And today we have not received any negative feedback. And as a matter of fact, the fire department will already be out in this area for a mutual aid agreement.
They do.
Wow. Yeah.
Tell you.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, city administrator's comments. I'm gonna go.
We could be here the rest of the night with, since we've all been together, in here for the last time. I won't go into many details. Again, just to provide updates on how we've tried to manage things here within the city. We participate, every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. It has been every day in the past with the EOC briefing related to the pandemic in Washington County and the state of Maryland. We follow that up at 9:30 with what has been a daily management meeting, just to gauge what is happening as far as federal legislation, the state of the city, other items that that come up seemingly on a daily basis. We have knocked those back to Monday, Wednesday, Fridays now in correlation with the EOC. We have sent out, and you all have been a part of this. We try to keep you as involved and informed as we can, not only on countywide, statewide matters, but also what we're trying to do in the city. We've also tried to keep the staff as informed as absolutely possible through emails, through postings on bulletin boards, done as much as we could to get that message out. Again, it is not the intention at all to do what basically would result in shutting the city down. We are the local source of services for our citizens, and it is imperative that we continue to provide our citizens with as many services as we can moving forward, even through this situation. We're doing it as safely and as efficiently as we absolutely can, not only on our non-public safety side, but obviously on our public safety side, and our 24/7 essential operations, water, wastewater, especially. We may not be doing everything right. First time we've ever been through this, all of us. First time anybody's been through this. We're doing the best we can. We need input. When we get input, we act on it. If we can't act on it, we tell people why we can't act on it. We are still learning this as we go, as is everybody. You all, the county, the state, everybody. We're trying to lean on each other as much as we can, both operationally and at times therapeutically, as we try to get through this. Also developed some very good contacts in the region, other governments that we are trying to look at, and they're looking at us for help as to how we get through this thing. I can tell you we are operating very, very similarly to many other municipalities, and I mean towns and cities, not counties, towns and cities that might not have the resources available to them that some of the larger areas do. That does not mean that we're trying to mimic everything, because it just may not fit. But again, this is a daily review amongst the management team, not only director level but mid-management level, to ensure that we're doing everything we possibly can to get through this, both health-wise and financially. As you heard today with Michelle, we honestly do not know what's going to happen financially. It is a day-to-day, I don't want to say struggle, but and Michelle's shaking her head, yes, it is a struggle. But it's a day-to-day review of how we do things. And as much as I feel we needed to review how the city operates in our previous environment, we're not going to be provided any choices now. We just have to make sure that we work together, keep you all as informed as possible in this, take your suggestions, and really we'll take any help we can get when it comes to this, because it was 102 years ago that Hagerstown went through a similar thing. We did find some old minutes in Donna's office from 1918, the fall of 1918, where your predecessors didn't meet for a month and a half. There's not a whole lot in the minutes about what they did, but the one thing they did do when they came back in December was created a health department. And they continued on after that, doing the business of the city. It does not show that the city ever closed. It does not show that they stopped providing the essential services that the city needs to be able to go forward. So again, thank you for your support through all of this. It has meant a lot to all of us, and all we can do is take this thing a day at a time and hope for the best. And really, if anybody's out there looking to provide support as far as providing the community with any type of face covering material that would be provided, we're getting a lot of cooperation from Goodwill, from the Board of Education. North Point, our new development partner, is going to be donating 1,000 face shields to the city, which is awesome. And we can't thank them enough for that. And again, we'll just we'll come back in the morning and we'll see what awaits us, and we'll try to do the best we can. And that's it for me.
Okay. Emily?
Well, I think Scott pretty much summarized that. But Scott, I want to thank you for your leadership. You haven't even been in this position for a year, and what a thing to have to deal with. So you and everyone else that's been working diligently to keep everything going, you are appreciated. And I just wanted to take a second to thank our citizens as well. You know, it's been really beautiful watching people making the cloth face masks, and some of our businesses using their 3D printers to create shields, and the people that have been donating food, the restaurants that are already struggling and are going to struggle for some time, but are using their inventory to donate to make sure our kids are eating. it's been pretty beautiful to watch. So I know we're all scared, but I also think this is a time that we can see how well we can come together, put our differences aside. And I think in the midst of all the sadness and the sickness, that we're seeing some really beautiful things. So thank you.
Shelley.
I mean, we can all just say ditto, to each person before that speaks. And I just want to add that the businesses that have had to use creativity and innovation to try to stay operational during this time has been pretty inspiring. And I think that we can all lean on each other for ideas, just like you said, Scott, to look at other municipalities and see how they're doing things. But I still want to encourage other businesses, much like the governor said today, not everyone is abiding by the social distancing rules and, making sure that not many people are in the store at one given time. I think that, we have to make sure that everyone knows the seriousness of this and the fact that social distancing is going to allow us to get back to whatever our new normal is. So I don't like seeing big box stores at, where it looks like a Black Friday celebration. That's not what this is. Where we all have to figure out a way to be creative and innovative, and those that are doing it and trying to get through these unknown, unprecedented, strange, different, unique times. We're doing the best that we can, but I encourage all businesses to do the same. And we all have to work together. So everyone stay safe. This has been interesting.
Lou?
Thank you, Mayor. I would say ditto to everything that's been said so far. Specifically, I'd like to thank staff immensely. Everybody is going through strange times. There are those of us who are sitting at home wondering where the money's going to come from. And then there are those working, getting paid, and wondering how long they can stay on the job without getting sick. And that's not good for anybody. Having said that, the one request I would have, and I'll defer to Kristen to what he wants to say, but Kristen sent an email today that I think needs an answer. I'm also concerned of our EOC briefings that we have. And the concern I have about them is that we're always warned that everything that's said on that call is confidential and shouldn't be repeated. I have to say, I've been involved, I think, on every phone call. I haven't heard one thing that I can comprehend that the public shouldn't be privy to. And I don't know why, if that's the case, why instead of saying we can't repeat anything we've heard, to pointing out things that they deem are confidential that we shouldn't repeat. Because 98%, if not 100% of what we hear in those calls, we see a couple hours later on the media releases. Having said that, I am very pleased with our city staff. But I can tell you, I know pretty much what the surge plan is for New York State. But when a citizen of Hagerstown asks me what the surge plan is for our area, my answer is I have no idea. I would like to know what these plans are. I'm very aware of all the excellent work that's being done, but I don't know what that amounts to. And I know one thing, when things go south, the buck stops with us. And so we have a right to know what these plans are. My citizens want to know what they are. They want to know if they're overflow plans, things of that nature. And if it's deemed that those things are confidential, then we should meet an executive session to hear what they are and why they would be confidential. And if we're being told that elected officials aren't privy to those, at that stage of the game, then I would start publicly asking the questions that I don't plan on doing now. Having said that, I want to commend everybody in the OC. I don't mean to imply at all that they aren't doing a wonderfully effective job in taking care of this entire county. I just think it would be nice to get a little bit more communication. And I want to thank everybody again. And everybody needs to be safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou. Austin?
All right, well, yeah, I'll start off with a ditto as well to everything everyone else has said. I think to Lou's point, I'm seeing some things that are troubling in that we've got, as Emily pointed out, we've got a lot of citizens that are going above and beyond, helping out, opening, thinking of new ways of doing things, restaurants thinking of ways to provide food to people, trying to stay in business, trying to keep their employees gainfully employed as long as they possibly can. We've got another part of the population that just doesn't seem to believe this. And I think, to Lou's point, some of the things, and I applaud everything that's going on in the EOC and the JIC. People are working diligently. I can't support them enough. But I think from what I've seen, just in my traveling around outside, there are a lot of people that just don't take this seriously yet. They think, hey, I feel fine, so I couldn't be a carrier. I couldn't be transmitting this. I feel great. This is all just another version of the flu, and I've had the flu before, and they don't really know what they're talking about. I have the benefit of a number of relatives in the medical profession that have seen all the x-rays firsthand and have told me the horror stories of what this virus can do. So I think as we go forward, I wanted to especially thank staff tonight. This is the first attempt at doing a public meeting like this with this technology, and I applaud them. I know there's some hiccups. There are going to be more hiccups. Scott, you've done a tremendous job, and I don't envy you the task of trying to figure out how to put together a public meeting on the 28th. I don't know how it's going to happen, but we'll see what we can do. But I think as we go forward, the one thing we all have to recognize is what we're seeing right now, the changes we're seeing. I think these things are going to be with us forever. Probably for the rest of our lives. My parents lived through the Depression, and that made an impact on them that stuck with them for the rest of their lives. And I think the ones of us who successfully make it through this, we will have learned a different way of living. And I think it's going to be with us probably for the rest of our lives. So I encourage everyone to approach the directives we're being given for social distancing, for sanitation, for personal sanitation, for thinking of your fellow man, keeping an adequate distance, covering your face when you sneeze and when you cough, those kinds of things. This probably isn't the last pandemic, so it's going to be quite a learning curve as we go forward. So I just wish people, I hope people, our citizens out there, all eventually begin to take this serious. And that's all I have to say this evening.
Thank you, Austin. Kristen?
Sure. A couple of things. First is it's a little odd. You're just sort of talking into a phone that was kind of supposed to be a meeting, and so you don't really know who your audience is, and you're sort of sitting there by yourself. But the first thing I would say is I definitely want to thank staff working in local government myself. I think that the simple and short response to the public is no government was prepared. No government is prepared for the events that have unfolded, that are occurring. That there is no ready response for the conditions as they've evolved. And so, if the public is sort of looking for government to immediately be that answer in such occasions, it just doesn't fully exist. And so, for me, I've tried to ignore the politics, and I would encourage citizens to do just that: ignore the politics and pay attention to your friends and your family and the health of them and their conditions. I think that's critical for citizens to do right now. I think that our job, frankly, and I think I've said this from the inception of the EOC startup and the emails and some of the concerns I raised, is three things. The first is we got to stay positive. I think that as soon as citizens see government sort of crack in that wave of positive and negative energy, it is as soon as they start to get concerned. And so I think government's job is definitely to stay positive. Our second task, I think, is to keep people safe as we reasonably can. And I think we do that by keeping the water and sewer going and keeping the lights on and keeping the streets in order, and all those things that we can do that the medical professionals then and the emergency services folks then don't have to spend that time focusing on. So I think that's our second role as government to help out. And the third is just as critical, is to keep the economy moving in every aspect that we can for all of those parts of the economy that can continue to move in this. And so I look at public works projects and construction projects primarily because they're outdoors. In many cases they're fairly individual and they're big dollar numbers. And so I think we got to keep the economy moving where we can. And I think those are the three things that we have to do as a city. I think those are the three things that every government at every level has to do right now. But that said, and this is the other concern that I expressed from the beginning, is it's hard to do those things as a local government, as a governmental entity, if you don't have clarity of what the plans are. And I feel like that's the area of coordination that I had and have had the greatest concern with, because if we don't collectively have an understanding of what the plans are to do that, then it's real hard to share that in some meaningful way with the citizens. Because as Lou said, I think you definitely have to share that with the citizens. So I think that we've gotten better at that. And I think we'll continue to improve. And as often said, I think we'll learn from this, and it'll be a lasting effect that we'll be able to implement better when we are through this, which will happen, and we're able to tackle it again in the future.
Okay, thank you guys very much. Listen, I know that I get what everyone's saying. I get what Lou's saying. I get what Austin's saying. I get what Kristen's saying. I do know that I probably know more about the surge plan for New York City too. Well, Cuomo's on TV 17 times a day talking about it. I mean, I don't know. I don't know where that information should come from. Should it come from our governor? Should it come from us locally? I'm not sure. I do know that currently, we are in a much better position than definitely New York, but for surrounding areas also, we have 57 confirmed positive test results back. We still only have 5 that are hospitalized. We've had, yesterday was 5 that were released. I don't know what that means, released today, if there are any. You know, so I know that, again, maybe our surge isn't going to happen for another 10 days. I'm not sure. I don't think anybody's sure of anything. But I do know that Meredith is prepared. When I spoke with the congressman yesterday, and when I spoke to the governor's office last week, I stressed the importance of testing kits. You know, we need them here. I think that we had 1,800 total. 1,500 came back so far. We've tested 1,800 as of yesterday. 1,500 came back. So listen, we're doing everything feasible that we can do as a city, and I believe the EOC is trying to keep it. I mean, they're kind of like the glue that's trying to keep everything together and get all the information out to all the right people. And there are updates every single day from every area of the city and county, all departments. So thank you to them, and hats off to them. I will echo a little bit about what Shelley says. You know, I've had some concerns. I've had some people reach out. You know, you had 5 for $10 mulch at Lowe's, and you had, you know, a swarm of people there. And listen, it's simple. We could do things that could restrict your freedom given these times. No one wants to do that. The governor doesn't want to do it. The president doesn't want to do it. The local governments don't want to do that. Just use a little bit of common sense. You know, if you're standing in line, you know, at CVS when I was getting a prescription, I stood 6 feet back where the tape was. I didn't have a problem with that. You know, just use a little bit of common sense, and we'll all get through this. Many of us, Austin, I believe, will survive this. I plan on being one. So way I can tell my grandchildren about it, how I survived the COVID back in the day. But listen, we're all going to get through it, and it's going to be life changing without a doubt. There's no doubt about that. But how we do that will measure us as people. So thank you very much for joining us, and look forward to hopefully meeting or being on here next Tuesday. We're adjourned.
We'll do better next time, promise.